Okay, just imagine this for a second. You're dropped on a totally deserted island, middle of the Pacific Ocean. Your only way out? You have to build a boat yourself from nothing but trash. Well, today we're going to break down how a group of YouTubers faced that exact insane scenario in one of the most ambitious challenges I've ever seen. Let's get into it. And that's how it begins. No fanfare, just that one simple, brutal sentence. It doesn't get more real than that. There's no safety net. This isn't some kind of simulation. It's just them against miles and miles of open ocean. So let's really set the stage here. What were they actually up against? Well, this first part is all about the impossible challenge. See, these guys weren't survival experts, not even close. They were, in their own words, just a bunch of YouTubers. And their opponent was the massive, unforgiving Pacific Ocean. And this is where the absolute craziness of the whole plan really starts to sink in. I mean, it's one thing to try and survive on an island, right? But it's a whole other level to try and build a boat out of trash and then sail it across the ocean with literally zero sailing experience. And you can hear it in their own words. They knew how insane it sounded. But what was the alternative? It was terrifyingly simple. If that boat doesn't get built, they're just stuck. Forever. So where do you even start? How do you turn a wild idea like that into an actual escape plan? Well, this next part is all about that process, building an escape and somehow turning a pile of junk into their one and only hope. Before they could even dream about a boat, they just had to survive. Those first few days were just a frantic blur. Build a shelter, find anything useful at all. But as you can see, by day 4, the exhaustion and heat stroke were already hitting hard, and the real work hadn't even started yet. This line just perfectly captures what they were looking at. This wasn't some high-tech workshop. Their building materials were garbage and sticks. The gap between what they had and what they needed just seemed impossible. But wow, did they get resourceful. They were trekking into dangerous parts of the jungle for bamboo, combing the beaches for anything that washed up. They learned real quick that one person's trash was now, quite literally, their treasure. The entire plan, the whole escape, hinged on finding just 4 of these sealed barrels to keep the boat from sinking. Just 4. So every single time they found one, it was this huge, massive victory. It was a sign that maybe, just maybe, this crazy plan could actually work. But that search was just brutal. The heat was absolutely punishing, and you can hear the real physical toll it was taking. They were fighting off heat stroke, dehydration, total exhaustion, all while doing this incredibly hard manual labor. This was no game. And then, after all those days of hardship, you get this, a moment of just pure, unfiltered joy, the float test. I mean, to see their pile of sticks and trash actually float on the water, that was the first real proof that their impossible plan might not be so impossible after all. But here's the thing. Building the boat was only half the battle. Now, they had to sail it. And this is where the whole challenge shifts. It goes from a test of cleverness and building skills to just a brutal, grueling test of pure physical and mental grit. Just let these numbers sink in for a second. 12 hours of paddling to travel just 5 miles. That is less than half a mile an hour. This was a slow, agonizing crawl, and every single inch they moved was earned through sheer exhaustion. And right from the get-go, things started to fall apart. Their arms gave out almost immediately. A paddle just snaps, and then the seasickness kicks in. The ocean wasn't just this empty space they had to cross. It felt like it was actively fighting them, with currents trying to pull them away. The physical pain they were in was just immense. Remember, they'd already been working for days on almost no food or water, and now they were asking their bodies to paddle for hours on end. They were hitting an absolute wall. So halfway through, at the 6-hour mark, this is what the team looked like. Nearly half the crew was completely out of action from seasickness. The entire mission was now on the shoulders of a tiny, exhausted group, and they still had miles to go. And it all led to this moment of just utter defeat. They weren't moving forward. They were just stuck, too far from the island they left, and with no way to reach the island ahead. They were stranded all over again, only this time in the middle of the ocean. And just when it seemed like all hope was lost, something incredible happens. The tide, the very thing that had been fighting them, it shifted and it started pulling them towards their destination. It was the one break they desperately needed, and it totally reignited their will to keep going. So, with this new energy, they paddle for hours more. They're getting closer and closer and closer. Victory feels like it's right there. But the ocean, well, the ocean had one last devastating twist waiting for them. This timeline is it's heartbreaking to look at. See the progress, 1 mile out, then 0.6, then half a mile. They are so close, and then with just 20 minutes to go, it all just stops. The tide, their savior from before, turns against them at the worst possible second. It's honestly hard to imagine a more crushing way for this to end. They could see the beach. After 11 hours of pure torture, they were just half a mile away. But the current was just too strong, and it started dragging them backwards, out to sea. And this really sums up the whole tragedy of it. 20 minutes. Over a 12-hour journey, the difference between success and failure came down to a 20-minute window. That is just an unbelievably thin margin. After everything they had poured into this, all the sweat, the pain, the hope, the emotional dam just finally breaks. It's just this raw, honest expression of how devastating that moment was. They gave it absolutely everything they had, and it still wasn't enough. In the end, they were rescued, but they didn't complete the challenge. And it leaves you with this question. I mean, they built a boat from trash that sailed for 12 hours. Was that really a failure? Or was it an incredible achievement that just fell agonizingly short? It's a reminder that sometimes the line between a legendary story of triumph and a heartbreaking tale of what if is almost invisibly thin.